There is one thing I have learned after many years of observing life. The path from having nothing to achieving success has never been a straight line. It is full of twists, missed beats, days when you don't know where you're going, and nights when you ask yourself whether you're good enough to keep going. I've lived through those years. There were mornings I woke up without even a few dollars in my pocket. I looked around and saw others progressing while I stayed stuck. And then I understood it wasn't because I wasn't smart, but because I hadn't understood the principles that drive success. No one is born knowing how to become excellent. We learn from failure. We learn from those who came before us. And sometimes we learn from the falls that hurt so much we don't even want to get back up. But if you're watching this video, it means you still have a belief, even a small one, that you can change. And I want to tell you this. There are lessons that, had you learned earlier, you wouldn't have had to walk through so many exhausting detours. Today, I want to share with you the principles that people who rise from nothing always carry with them. Not theoretical advice, not things that sound good, but lessons I have witnessed, lived through, and paid a real price to understand. Keep the final part of this video close, because it may be the moment that redirects your entire life. And now, let's begin with the first thing, the principle I wish I had understood much earlier. Principle 1, find a successful role model and follow in their footsteps. I used to think I could find my own way. I was young, ambitious, and like many young people, I believed that as long as I worked hard, life would open a path for me. But the harder I tried, the more I felt like I was walking in a forest without a map. Every decision felt like randomly choosing a path, hoping this time I chose correctly. But one afternoon, when I was still struggling in my first sales job, I met a man who changed my life forever, Earl Schoaf. That day, I remember clearly, it was hot, and my shoes were so worn out that if I stood under the sun a few more minutes, the soles would fall off. But I stepped into the room where he was speaking not out of confidence, but because I had run out of options. And the first thing he said was, don't try to find your own path before learning the path of someone who's already successful. I was shocked. My whole life I believed I had to do it myself. But he just smiled and continued. The path to success has already been laid out by those who came before. Your job is not to reinvent it, but to follow their footsteps long enough to understand why it works. That was the first time I understood. Success leaves clues. You can observe, learn, copy, then develop it in your own way. But you must begin by learning from a role model. In the 1,950 seconds, 60 seconds, I met many young people like me eager to work, eager to try, but none wise enough to ask. How did the people before me get through this phase? You don't need to guess. You don't need endless trial and error. You don't need to pay for it with years of your life. Successful people already paid that price for you. They fell. They failed. They were foolish. They lost things. And they got back up. The problem is, poor people learn success, but they don't learn failure. Successful people learn failure first, then success after. Why is failure so important? Because in failure, you see what you should never do, which habits destroy a life, which thoughts lead to poverty, which attitudes keep you stuck, which reactions cost you opportunities. And when I began listening to Schoaf's failures, I was stunned. Many of the mistakes he made were exactly like mine. I realized success doesn't teach you as much as the failures of others. From that day, I did one thing, a simple thing that changed my life. I started following role models. At that time, I was very poor, very, very poor. But if there was a successful person in town, I went to hear them speak. If there was a free event, I stood for hours just to hear a few minutes. If there was an evening available, I invited them to dinner, even if I could only afford the cheapest dish for myself and the best dish for them. One time, I invited a successful man to dinner. My heart pounded so hard I thought people could hear it. But he agreed. In those 90 minutes, he gave me 9 lessons that would have taken me 9 years to learn on my own. That was when I understood. Poor people wait for opportunities. Successful people create opportunities. One dinner can change your entire future. There's a metaphor Schoaf told me. Jim, if you want to become someone who knows the way, don't try to light your own torch in the forest. Follow the person who is already carrying the torch. Successful people don't just have results. They have systems. Systems of thinking. systems of action, systems of reaction, systems of decision-making, systems of discipline. You don't see it right away, but if you follow them long enough, you will. Ask yourself, who are you following? Someone you want to become? Or someone who is standing still but talks a lot? Successful people always leave clues. And if you follow the right clues, you'll end up in the right place. Don't look for shortcuts. Look for people who know the way. And when you begin to see changes from within yourself, that's when you're ready to go deeper into the next principle. Principle 2, learn to listen. The poorest skill, but the most valuable one. I still remember an afternoon back then when I was working for a small company. In a meeting, I talked a lot. I tried to prove I was smart, to show that I understood the problem better than anyone else in the room. After the meeting, Schaff walked over, put his hand on my shoulder, and said something I never forgot. Jim, you speak well, but you're not learning anything. That sentence froze me. I, the one trying so hard to show my ability, was actually blocking my own growth. He looked directly into my eyes and continued. Poor people talk to impress. Successful people listen to get better. That day, Shoaf told me about a man who once worked with him. This man was smart, quick, but failed repeatedly. The reason was simple. Whenever he received feedback, he immediately interrupted, explained, defended, protected his ego. And then he lost everything because no one wants to help someone who refuses to listen. As Shoaf told the story, I saw myself in it. For years, I thought speaking well was an advantage. But I discovered the truth. Talking well impresses people for a few minutes. Listening well changes your entire life. Listening is not silence. Listening is when you shrink your ego to expand your understanding. Poor people listen while preparing to reply. Successful people listen while wanting to learn. There is a huge difference between the two. I once met a young man who loves sales. He asked me how to become good. I said, to be good at sales, learn from kids selling lottery tickets and candy. He laughed, thinking I was joking. But I was serious. I had observed them many times. Those small kids walk under the blazing sun, get rejected countless times, yet they don't argue, don't defend, don't explain, they just continue. They listen to rejection with surprising calmness, no ego hurt, no anger, no shame. They listen only to know they need to find the next person. And sometimes you need a heart as strong as a child selling lottery tickets. Rejected, but not wounded, just moving on. Listening is a mirror for thinking, and successful people always reflect on themselves before judging others. When you listen to someone, you're not just hearing their words. You hear how they live. You hear the experience they paid for. You hear the wounds they hide in their stories. I once had dinner with a major businessman of that era. Throughout the meal, I only asked and listened. He told me about his first bankruptcy, about the shame of cleaning out the office he once took pride in, about having to sell his commemorative watch to pay his employees, about standing in front of the mirror and telling himself, either change or it's over. That night, I learned more than any book had ever taught me. And the interesting part was, he only agreed to meet me because I said, I want to listen to you, not argue with you. You know what? Successful people like being listened to because they're too used to being interrupted or challenged. They will open up to someone who truly listens. They will share things they would never say in a seminar with hundreds of people. Listening is the key to entering their world. Listening is a beautiful metaphor, like planting seeds in an empty field. A field cannot grow anything if it's full of rocks. A mind cannot learn anything if it's full of ego. When you listen, you're clearing that field. You remove assumptions. You remove the need to prove you're right. You remove the urge to appear smart. And then every word from others becomes a seed. Some seeds sprout immediately. Some take years. Some lie dormant until you experience pain. Only then do you understand their meaning. But all are seeds of growth. Action questions for you. When was the last time you truly listened? When someone gives feedback, do you want to understand or to defend? Do you have a notebook to record lessons from successful people? Have you ever invited someone to dinner just to listen to them? Be honest with yourself. When you learn to listen, you begin to learn to change. It took me nearly 30 years to understand that the secret of success is not in what I say, but in what I am humble enough to listen to. And when you know how to listen, truly listen, you will realize the next thing I learned. Listening only has value when you turn it into clear action. Principle 3, from idea to action, the bridge poor people never cross. I once met a young man at a seminar in California in the 1,960 seconds. He came to me with bright, enthusiastic eyes. He said he had dozens of business ideas, a long list of plans he would do, wanted to do, intended to do. After listening for a while, I asked him a very simple question. Among all those things, what have you actually completed? He froze, looked down, then said quietly, so quietly I had to lean in to hear him, honestly, I haven't started. I looked at him and saw myself at 18, 20 years old. I once had thousands of ideas, drew my future in a notebook full of opportunities, dreamed of wealth, freedom, prosperity. But when I looked back, I hadn't done anything. I lived on hope instead of action, on intentions instead of results, on plans instead of real steps. And Shoaf told me a sentence that changed everything. Jim, ideas don't create results. Action creates your life. Ideas are cheap. Action is expensive. Everyone has ideas. Poor people have the most ideas but take the least action. And the painful truth is, ideas without action turn you into a sophisticated dreamer, no different from someone standing on a bridge staring at the river but never daring to jump in and swim. I once thought I needed more preparation, more thinking, the right moment. But the perfect moment never comes. If you wait until you're confident to begin, you will never begin. One time, Shoaf asked me, Jim, do you know what poor people usually say? I replied, I don't know. He said, they say, let me try and see if it works. That is the language of failure. Successful people don't try. They do, and do to the end. If it doesn't work yet, they adjust and continue. If they fail, they change the method, not the goal. Strong action is the bridge most people never cross. Between ideas and success, there is always a gap. That gap is called strong action, not occasional action, not half-hearted action, not action when you feel inspired, but consistent, strong, uncompromising action. I once sold by making a few calls a day. No results. I complained. Shoaf looked at me and said, no one succeeds with a few scattered actions. If you need to make 1,000 calls, then make 1,000 calls. And do you know what happened? The 100th call gave the first result. The 250th call gave the first contract. The 500th call was when I began to feel good. And the 800th call changed my entire income. Not because I was smarter, but because I acted enough to surpass the clumsy beginning. Poor people hate big action because action exposes their lack of discipline. I don't say this to criticize. I say it because I used to be that way. Big action reveals every weakness, reveals fear, reveals laziness, reveals bad habits, reveals your true level of discipline. And because poor people fear seeing these things, they choose ideas. Ideas are safe, unjudged, untested. But ideas don't make you wealthy. Never have. Never will. You can have the best boat, clearest map, finest compass. But if you don't row, you stay still. Millions of people are standing still on the boat of their lives, not because they lack dreams, but because they lack oars. Ideas are the map. Goals are the destination, but action is the oar that moves you from knowing to having. Action questions for you. How many ideas do you currently have sitting in a notebook that you haven't started? Answer honestly. Your life is inside that answer. Ideas have value only when paid for with action. I didn't succeed because I had many ideas. I succeeded because I had one good idea and acted on it thoroughly. When you take strong action, every door opens. Not because the world favors you, but because you are proving to life that you deserve it. And when you begin to take strong action, you will realize something extremely important. You are only strong when you have discipline. Action without discipline will burn out and give up soon. So we move on to the next principle. Principle 4, discipline. the quiet foundation behind every success. For a long period of my life, I didn't understand what discipline was. I thought success came from inspiration, from motivation, from those days when you're in the mood to go hard. But the more I grew, the more I realized that the most successful people I had ever met all had one thing in common: their discipline was stronger than the goals they set. I remember once Shof told me about a man who worked at a factory in the Washington area in the 1,940 seconds. This man didn't have an outstanding appearance, didn't talk much, didn't have any special talent, but he had one thing the entire factory respected. Every day, without missing a single shift, he arrived 30 minutes earlier than everyone else and stayed 30 minutes later. No one asked him to do that. No one watched him. No one paid him extra. He just believed one thing: if you want a life above average, live in a way that is above average. And the result? After 10 years, he became the youngest manager in the history of that factory. Not because he was the smartest, not because he was the most talented, but because he was the most disciplined. Discipline is not something you do when you feel like it. Discipline is what you do even when you have no motivation left. I once tried to get rich on inspiration. There were days I worked like crazy thinking I was moving incredibly fast. But then there were weeks when I got nothing done because I wasn't in the mood. And it was Shof who told me, "Jim, if emotions control your actions, you'll be poor. If discipline controls your actions, you'll be rich." Those words sent a chill down my spine because they were so true. Poor people often have goals, but successful people have habits. I once asked many poor people about their dreams. They said they wanted to be financially free, have a big house, have a high income, start a business, become excellent. But when I asked what they did every day to move closer to those goals, they couldn't answer. I realized goals are something everyone has, but habits are something very few people possess. Successful people always attach goals to specific habits. Reading 30 minutes a day, learning one skill every month, setting aside a small amount to invest, calling 20 customers before lunch, writing in a journal every night. Small habits create big changes. Discipline is like the roots of a big tree. No one sees them, but they hold the whole tree against the storm. From afar, people see success, money, fame, influence, but they don't see these things. The late nights working, the early mornings waking up, the times of turning down pleasures, the days of working when the spirit is exhausted, the moments when no one is clapping, those are the roots. You can't show off roots to anyone. No one admires roots, but the deeper the roots, the stronger the tree. And success is the same. A person without discipline always lives by emotions. A person with discipline lives by standards. Have you ever said things like, "I'll do it when I'm free. I'll start when I feel like it. Let's do it tomorrow. I'm tired today." That is the language of losers. I used to say it thousands of times, so I know it very well. But successful people say, "I do it because I decided to. Today isn't great, but I'll still do enough. I don't wait for feelings to act." I have never met a truly extremely successful person who did not have strong discipline. Never. Action question for you. If each day you worked an extra 30 minutes, how would your life be different in 1 year? Answer honestly. Discipline is the bridge between where you stand and where you want to go. I'm not stronger than anyone. I just created standards for myself that I must follow even when I have no energy left. And those days when I don't want to do it but still do it are the days that change my life the most. And then I realized something else important. Discipline not only helps you move forward, it also helps you stay away from the things that pull you down. So, the next step is something very few people are willing to do, but successful people always do. Principle 5, stay away from poor environments. You will not change if you stay in the same place. I once believed that effort alone was enough, that being hardworking, persistent, and optimistic would eventually change my life. But then there was a period when no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't go more than a few steps further. My income didn't increase. My thinking didn't expand. My future didn't look brighter. I just stayed stuck in the same spot. One day, Schof asked me a question that stunned me. Jim, who is talking to you every day? I was surprised. Why is that so important? I asked. He answered with a sentence I've carried my whole life. Because people don't change because of the first effort, they change because of the environment that nurtures them every day. That day, for the first time, I looked back at my life and saw something I had never dared to face. Everyone I was spending time with was just like me, or worse than me. They didn't read books, didn't have goals, didn't talk about the future, didn't build anything new. They only talked about scarcity, difficulty, and blame. And I, without realizing it, carried that same energy. I was the average version of them. The environment is like the air. You don't see it, but it determines who you are. You can't walk into a smoke-filled room and expect your lungs to be clean. You can't stay in a negative environment and expect your mind to be clear. You can't live among people with weak discipline and expect yourself to become more disciplined. Schof said, see the environment as a mold. No matter how good the dough is, it will take the shape of that mold. I realized I was in a very narrow mold. It wasn't that they were bad. It wasn't that they were toxic. It was that they weren't going anywhere. And if I stayed, I wouldn't go anywhere either. Poor people live in poor environments without realizing it. Successful people intentionally choose environments that help them grow. Back then, I didn't believe this. I thought I was immune, that I could keep a good mindset no matter who I was with. But I was wrong. Very wrong. From their language, from their fears, from the way they saw life, from the phrases, whatever, do it tomorrow, it's too hard. We can't do that. Those things seeped into me little by little. Every day. No one taught me, but I learned it all. That was when Schof said his famous line, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Not because the number 5 is important, but because the relationships around you are little mirrors, each reflecting a part of who you are. If you're among 5 people with no drive, you'll lose your drive. If you're among 5 average people, it's hard for you to be extraordinary. If you're among 5 complainers, you can't be optimistic. You can't fly if you keep sitting among people who only like to walk. I once saw the image of baby eagles raised with chickens. They didn't know they could fly. They didn't know the sky was theirs. They only knew how to scratch the ground, pick at seeds, sleep early, and wake up early. Not because their wings were weak, but because the environment was too low. And many people are like that. It's not that they lack ability. It's not that they lack intelligence. It's not that they don't deserve success. They're just living in a cage that's too small. Changing your environment is the most painful step, but the most necessary one. I have to admit, the day I left my old group of friends to find a new environment, it hurt. Lonely. Empty. Like losing a part of my life. But then I met people with goals, people who were moving forward, people who talked about opportunities, not problems, people who read books, people who took massive action. And after just a few months, I changed. Not because someone guided me, but because I started becoming like them. Action questions for you. Who are the 5 people you spend the most time with? Are they pulling you up or keeping you where you are? Answer with the truth, not with your emotions. To change your life, change your environment. You cannot change if you keep standing in the same old mold. My first real takeoff didn't begin when I made a lot of money. It began the day I stepped away from people who were no longer aligned with the version of myself I wanted to become. You don't become an eagle by trying harder among chickens. You have to rise to where the eagles live. And when you change your environment, one more thing will appear, something everyone on the path to success has to face. You will have to face fear. The fear of massive action. The fear of failure. And the fear that you're not good enough. Principle 6, facing fear. There is no freedom as long as you are controlled by fear. There is one thing that the years of poverty taught me. Poor people are not poor because they lack opportunities, but because they lack the courage to seize opportunities when they appear. Afraid of failure, afraid of rejection, afraid of being judged, afraid of doing it wrong, afraid of not being good enough, afraid to start, afraid to change, afraid of loss. If you pay attention, all fears have one thing in common. They keep you standing still. And standing still is the first failure. I was once afraid too. So afraid that I almost missed my entire life. I still remember the first evening I planned to attend Earl Schoaf's talk. The ticket was only $10, but at that time I only had $7 in my pocket. I stood in front of the hall door for nearly 20 minutes. Hands in my pockets, heart pounding, my head full of thoughts that paralyzed me. What if I go in and people look at me? What if I sit there alone? What if they ask what I do for a living? What if they find out I'm poor? I almost went home. And if I had gone home that night, you might never have known my name. Not because I lacked money, but because I lacked courage. And then I heard myself say, Jim, if you keep being afraid, then until when? I took a deep breath, walked in, and my life turned in a completely new direction. Fear doesn't disappear when you run from it. Fear only disappears when you walk through it. I once believed successful people were less afraid, but that's not true. Successful people are just as afraid as you. Afraid of failure. Afraid of losing money. Afraid of mistakes. Afraid of losing face. Afraid of rejection. But the difference is, poor people wait until they are no longer afraid to act. Successful people act even while they are still afraid. Once Schoaf told me, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting while your heart is still shaking. Fear is like a shadow. It's only big when you turn your back to it. When you face the light, the shadow shrinks. When you turn away, the shadow grows 10 times bigger. Fear is the same. If you avoid it, it grows, it strengthens until it becomes a mental monster. But if you face it, it shrinks and returns to what it really is. Just a feeling. I've met people far smarter than me, but they lived their whole lives in the shadow of fear. Afraid to change careers. Afraid to invest. Afraid to speak up and act. Afraid to chase their dreams. Afraid to start over. The result? They lost nothing, but they gained nothing either. Fear steals your future without ever touching you. It's enough if it keeps you still. Wings only work when you dare to jump out of the nest. I once saw a young eagle standing on the edge of the nest for a long time, looking down the cliff. They were scared. They trembled. They doubted their own wings. But when they jumped, it wasn't the wings that made them safe. It was the jump that made the wings start working. People are the same. You will never know how strong you are until you dare to jump into what scares you. Poor people learn how to avoid fear. Successful people learn how to manage fear. You cannot completely remove fear, but you can do 3 things. 1, call the fear by its real name. Am I afraid of losing money? Afraid of being judged? Afraid of failing? 2, take the first small step. Call 1 customer. Submit 1 application. Work out for 5 minutes. Write 1 page. 3, repeat until the fear fades. Repeated action wears down fear like water wears down stone. When I started making sales calls, I was afraid of rejection. But after the 200th, 300th call, the fear disappeared. Not because I became stronger, but because I had done it so many times. Fear could not withstand the frequency of my actions. Action questions for you. What is the thing in your life that scares you the most right now? What are you running away from? Answer honestly, because the fear you don't face will become the wall you will never cross. You don't lose because you're afraid. You lose because you let fear decide your actions. I've had many turning points in my life, but none of them happened before a moment of courage. Your life doesn't change on the day you feel strong, but on the day you do the thing you fear the most. And when you overcome fear, you will see something else very important. Your potential is greater than you think, but you must learn to expand it every day. Principle 7, grow yourself every day. You only become rich when the person inside you grows asterisk. I once spent a very long time wondering, why do some people work forever and never get better off? Why do some people change jobs over and over, but their lives stay the same? I was once like them. I changed careers, changed projects, changed environments, changed goals, but couldn't change my results. Not until Shoaf said a sentence that woke me up. Jim, your income only increases when the person inside you increases. I froze. Because that sentence hit exactly the point I had never thought about. I was trying to change my life by changing my circumstances. When the first thing that needed to change was me. All success starts from the self, not from circumstances. I used to think if I had a better job, I would be better off. If I had a better mentor, I would be more capable. If I had better opportunities, I would be richer. But Shoaf said, the best opportunity is useless if you're not big enough to receive it. I realized the problem wasn't a lack of opportunities. The problem was that I hadn't yet become the version who could hold on to the opportunity when it came. When I read the first book Shoaf gave me, I woke up, not because the book was especially great, but because for the first time I understood successful people learn every day. Poor people only learn when they're forced to. Personal development is not about big things. It's about small things done consistently. You don't need to read 50 books a year. You don't need to learn 10 new skills immediately. You don't need to enroll in expensive courses. You just need 30 minutes a day, a notebook, a book, a simple commitment. Today, I will be a little better than yesterday. That small daily accumulation over time becomes massive change. I read 30 minutes every night. At first, nothing seemed special. But after 30 days, my mind was clearer. After 90 days, my thinking was different. After 1 year, my income changed. After 5 years, my life looked nothing like before. Not because of the books, but because I had grown day by day. A powerful metaphor. A seed only grows when it feeds itself from within. No one can pull a tree up to make it grow faster. You cannot shout at a seed to make it sprout. You cannot warm the trunk and expect it to grow taller. A tree grows because it grows from within. It absorbs by itself. It accumulates nutrients by itself. It wraps itself around the damage in the soil. People are the same. You can change your environment, change your job, change your goals. But if you don't change inside, you will always return to exactly where you started. Poor people look outside. Successful people look inside. Success doesn't come from what you add to your schedule, but from who you become in the process. I once treated personal development as something nice to do. But then I understood it's something you must do. If I don't grow, everything else around me will slowly rot. Career, relationships, finances, health, beliefs, future. You cannot maintain success with an old mindset. You cannot build a new house on an old foundation. You cannot hold great wealth with a small way of thinking. You must become the person who can contain the success you desire. Remember, income never exceeds your level of personal development. I once met a man who earned $5,000 a month, but his mind could only handle $2,000. Just a few months later, he spent it all, fell into debt, and went back to the number he could tolerate. Life has a strange but precise principle. You will always return to the level that matches the version you currently are. Want to raise your life? Raise yourself first. Action questions for you. What have you invested in yourself this week? What are you reading? What are you learning? Answer honestly, because that answer predicts your future more clearly than any prophecy. Don't chase success. Become the person success is drawn to. I'm not rich because I was lucky. I'm rich because I changed enough to deserve wealth. I'm not successful because I met the right people. I'm successful because I became the kind of person who meets the right people. And when you start growing every day, you will discover something else, extremely important, something that can lift you up fast or pull you down very deep. Relationships. Principle 8. Build quality relationships. Do the people you choose determine who your life becomes? I once believed that success was a matter of just me. That as long as I had personal effort, personal discipline, personal mindset, it would be enough to reach the finish line. But the more I grew up and walked deeper into life, the more I understood a truth that Shoaf repeated over and over. No one succeeds alone. If you look back at any great journey in business, art, philosophy, or sports, you'll see this. Behind every extraordinary person, there is always a collection of the right people. People who lift them up. People who awaken their potential. People who believe in them even when they themselves don't yet believe in who they are. I once lacked such relationships and I paid the price. There was a period when I lived among people older than me in age, but not ahead of me in mindset. They weren't bad, I have to make that clear. But they had habits, beliefs, fears, and limitations that I absorbed every day. They said things like, success is just luck. Business is risky, don't go too deep. Having a bit of money is enough. Why be so greedy? You think you're better than us or something? And even though I didn't agree, I was still influenced. Those sentences clung to my mind like dust on a window pane. Bit by bit, the light inside me dimmed. Not because they lowered my value, but because I allowed them to limit my potential. One day, Schoff said, Jim, a bad environment makes you poor, but the wrong relationships keep you poor forever. That sentence woke me up. The people you connect with don't just affect your life. They shape the version of yourself you become. Observe the people around you. What do they talk about? About the future or about the past? About opportunities or about difficulties? About growth or about complaints? About good habits or about indulgence? Poor people connect based on emotion. I hang out with them because we're close, because it's been years, because we're used to each other. Successful people connect based on value. I spend time with them because they make me better. For many years, I observed something strange but painfully true. Average lives are often surrounded by average relationships. Excellent lives are often surrounded by excellent relationships. Not because successful people choose rich friends. They choose people who help them maintain high standards. You can't swim fast if you're tied to people who don't want to leave the shore. Imagine you are swimming out to sea. You want to go farther out to see a wider sky. But 3 friends cling to you because they're afraid of deep water. The more you pull them, the more exhausted you become. The more you want to swim, the more they hold you back. The more you reach out, the more they become afraid, and then they pass that fear on to you. At some point, you have to choose. Keep swimming or sink with them. That's not selfishness. That's the reality of life. Not everyone wants to go as far as you. Not everyone wants to change like you. Not everyone has the courage to step into a new chapter of life like you. You are not better than them. You're just heading in a direction they did not choose. 3 types of relationships that successful people always seek. 1, people ahead of you, mentors. They don't need to be famous. They don't need to be wealthy. They just need to be a few chapters ahead of you in life. They will shorten your path from 10 years down to 1 year. 2, people walking with you, companions. People who share the same values, the same energy, the same journey. They help you keep your fire. They remind you to get back up when you fall. One friend like that is more precious than gold. 3, people coming after you, those you help. When you share, when you lift others up, you lose nothing, you reinforce yourself. No one truly understands a principle until they teach it to someone else. Successful people always have all 3 layers of relationships. That's the structure that lifts them up, keeps them steady, and makes them grow. Action questions for you. Are the people you meet every week lifting you up or pulling you down? Who is someone you can learn from each month? Be honest, because this answer will predict your future more accurately than you think. Your life changes when the people around you change. I was once poor not because I lacked skills, but because I stayed around people who didn't believe they could be rich. I was once small not because I lacked ability, but because I stayed around people who were afraid to reach higher. Only when I changed my relationships did my life truly take off. And once you build quality relationships, you will realize one more thing. Every good result in life comes from simple habits you practice every day. Principle 9 small habits create big results. You change your life through the poor-looking things you do every day, asterisk, asterisk. There is something I only understood much later. Life doesn't change because of big things. Life changes because of small things repeated every day. I once thought I needed one big decision, a turning point, a golden opportunity to break through. But Shoaf told me, Jim, 95% of success comes from the things no one sees, no one praises, but you must do every day. When I heard that, I didn't believe it. But then my own life proved the opposite. I once had no habits, and that's why I stayed poor. When I was young, I did everything based on emotion. On days I felt like it, I read. On days I was tired, I skipped. On days I was happy, I did extra. On days I was sad, I avoided everything. I called that freedom. But in reality, it was chaos. No day looked like the day before. No structure. No foundation. Nothing I did long enough to turn into a real skill. One day, Shof asked me, "Jim, do you want your life to be stable or shaky?" I answered, "I want it to be stable." He said, "Then create stability in each day." That day I understood that habits are not something small. Habits are the wall that protect your future. The poor like explosive action. The successful like small but consistent action. Poor people want quick results. They want to see them now. They want dramatic change. But real success doesn't come from explosions. It comes from accumulation. I once met a man who had worked for 20 years, but never improved, because every time he started a new habit, jogging, reading, selling, learning a skill, he quit after 7 days. The reason wasn't that he was incapable. It was that he didn't have enough patience for small things. Shoaf said, "If you can't do a small thing every day, you will never do big things in life. Imagine you improve yourself by 1% each day. No one will notice, not even you. But 1% every day for 1 year is 37 times better than your original version. A seed doesn't grow big in 1 day, but each day it grows a little, and one day you look back, it has become a tree. Habits work the same way. No one sees you reading 10 pages every night. No one sees you waking up 20 minutes earlier. No one sees you saving $5 a day. No one sees you writing 3 lines in a journal every night. But then, 6 months later, everyone calls you lucky. Habits are the invisible engine of successful people. I once worked with many wealthy people of that time, and I discovered an amazing common point. They had habits stronger than their emotions. Even when sad, they did the work. Even when tired, they did the work. Even when they didn't feel like it, they did the work. Not because they were superhuman, but because they understood one simple thing. Results don't care about your mood. Results only care about your habits. Which small habits changed my life? I'll share honestly without decoration. 1. Reading 30 minutes every day before sleep? Not 3 hours. Just 30 minutes. But those 30 minutes rebuilt my thinking. 2. Writing in a notebook every night. Just 3 things. What did I learn today? What did I do wrong? What do I need to improve? That notebook didn't make me rich right away, but it made me clear-headed. 3. Taking action within the first 5 minutes of the day. I didn't let my brain procrastinate. I started with the most important task, even if my mood was bad. 4. Saving a small portion, even when I was very poor. This habit created a sense of financial control, something poor people rarely have. And the miracle is this. Habits create confidence. Confidence creates motivation. Motivation creates results. Action question for you. What did you do today that made you 1% better? Answer deeply. This is the question that decides your future. You don't create your future with dreams. You create your future with habits. I used to admire people who did great things. But then I understood they were only better than me in one thing. They did the small things I ignored. When I began to build habits, I changed. When my habits changed, my life changed. And when you have strong habits, you will step into the final principle, the principle that most people ignore. But the richest and most successful always follow. They respect the system of success and never try to change it. Principle 10, respect the system of success. Don't try to reinvent what has already been proven by legends. Asterisk, asterisk. There's one thing that many young people, including me in the past, often fall into. We tend to think we're special, and therefore, we need our own unique path. I used to be like that. I thought success could be shortened by shortcuts, by hacks, by new formulas. I thought if I was smarter, I could skip steps others had to go through. And I paid for it with several years of my life, until one day Shof said to me in a very gentle voice that still hit me hard, "Jim, if that system has helped thousands of people succeed, who are you to want to change it?" I stood still as if someone had slapped me awake. That sentence didn't insult me. It hit right at the arrogance I hadn't seen in myself. He continued, "You can't get to where successful people are standing if you insist on skipping the steps they walked. Success is not something you have to invent. Success is something you have to follow." I once looked at entrepreneurs, speakers, people with stable incomes back then, and I saw they had things in common. They all observed successful people ahead of them, learned the right model, followed the right sequence, persevered long enough, and especially didn't try to fix what didn't need fixing. They weren't tempted by being different too early. They didn't demand to improve something they didn't yet understand. They didn't add to a system they'd just learned yesterday. Poor people are the opposite. As soon as they've learned a little, they want to change the whole system. I know this because I used to be that way. The principles of successful people are very simple, but the world wants them to be complicated. Schoaf said, "If a formula has helped 100 people become better, it's good enough to help you." But people, because of ego, often do three things that destroy results. One, cutting steps out because they find them annoying, because they think they're unnecessary, because they think, "I'm smarter than others." Two, adding new steps, adding the parts they like, adding what they personally think is good, not understanding why the system was built that way, but already changing it. Three, acting by emotion, not by process. On days they feel like it, they follow it correctly. On days they're tired, they skip. On days they're confident, they jump ahead to the next step. This is like learning a cake recipe, but every time you bake, you change a little. The first time you cut the sugar. The next time you add more flour. Another time you increase the heat. The next time you swap ingredients. And then you're surprised the cake is never good. It's not that the recipe is wrong. It's that you don't follow the recipe. You can't edit the map when you've never reached the destination. I once heard a story about a man driving across states for the first time. He saw the road was winding, long, full of curves. He got annoyed and said, "What a terrible route. I'll draw my own shorter one." And he drove into the forest, got lost, ran out of gas, and took twice as long to get back to the old road. Successful people follow the map because the person who drew that map has already been to the destination. Unsuccessful people throw away the map because they think they're better. The system of success is not for decoration. It is the skeleton that supports your life. I've met many young people full of potential who never broke through because they didn't follow a working schedule. He didn't follow sales principles. He didn't follow the process their mentor gave them. It didn't stick with the system long enough for it to work. They thought they were being creatively free. But in reality, they were breaking the only frame that could take them out of their old life. Successful people, on the other hand, they respect the system until they themselves are big enough to create a new system. Action question for you. What system are you currently learning from someone excellent? Answer honestly, because a good system only works if you follow it. Don't change the system that helps you succeed. Let the system change you. I once spent years learning that I didn't need to be smarter than those who came before me. I just needed to be humble enough to learn from them. And that humility took me farther than any short burst of intelligence ever could. You've gone through 10 principles that help those who rise from nothing become the most successful version of their lives. And what's left, the most important part, is no longer theory. It is the moment you look back at yourself and decide who you will become. If you've made it to the end of this video, I want you to pause for a moment and truly take a deep breath, because what you just heard is not just 10 principles. They are 10 doors opening to 10 different versions of you. And only you, not me, not anyone else, are the one who chooses which door you want to step into. I still remember the day I first met Schoaf. I was poor, confused, insecure, and had no idea where my life was heading. But there was just one thing that made me different from the poor Jim Rohn before that. I decided not to live one more day the same as the previous one. That was the moment that changed everything. And I want to tell you this, the most sincere thing I can say. No one is coming to pull you up. No one is coming to bring you an opportunity. No one is coming to rewrite your life for you. You have to do that. You have to be the one who stands up. You have to be the one who starts. You have to be the one who says, enough. From today on, I change. These 10 principles are not for people who want to listen for fun. They are for people who want to live a life worth living. For those who want to become a version of themselves that one day when they look in the mirror, they can smile and say, I did not betray my own potential. If you are still here, it means there is something very special inside you. A seed of life, a flame, something that still wants to rise. Protect it. Guard it. Nourish it with daily actions. And if what you heard in this video resonates with you, leave a small sign, just a single. So I know you are still on this journey with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next lessons from Jim Rohn Treasures. I'll leave you with the quote I always carry with me in every stage of life. Success is not something you pursue. Success is something you attract by the person you become. See you on the next part of the journey. You deserve a better life, and that journey starts today.